Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco, Dish Out on the Movies, and today is the last day that I have to watch a questionable movie.
This is not the last one. This is the second to last one. The last one...
You said this was the last one. What?
The last one will be Safi is forced to watch Goosebumps episodes that she never watched before.
Oh, I don't care.
While eating questionable foods like prune cookies, cream of spinach, and ants on a log.
I'm not eating any bugs. I did been there, done that.
Ants on a log.
That's raisins and
ants
peanut
on a
butter
log
and celery.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Creepy. Like, just imagine, some people, they could pretend like they're real. Because I've eaten ants before. I know what they taste like. I know their consistency, their texture. I don't know. I don't think that raisins are very good at being like
I'm not eating
ant
bugs.
Substitutes.
I did that. I've been there, done that.
What about worms?
I'm not eating any kind of insect, worm, arachnid, anything. And I wanted to get off of it.
Arachnid.
I've been there, done that, in another country on the other side of the moon, which is basically what it's like when you're in Africa.
What about chocolate cookies?
Marco, get off of it.
Okay, let's
just go on. This
is Safi being forced to watch A Clockwork Orange, and let's go behind why. Well, this was part of it. I thought, an easy way to get to doing this would be to build it around movies that Safi doesn't want to watch because of a reason or another. And when Safi was 10 years old...
No, when I was 16.
When Safi was...
I was a junior in high school.
When Safi was Lexington Junior, she was going on a date with somebody who...
I'm not going to say his name.
Somebody questionable.
No, he's actually a doctor, and he was a pig farmer.
When she was going on a date with Dr. Phil,
No, it's Billy.
Dr. Billy.
Dr. Billy.
They went to have dinner poo, and it was like something simple. What was it, Safi? It was like a burger or something?
I think it was probably a burger and, maybe a salad and fries. And so last night for dinner, I don't usually eat hamburgers of any kind.
Yeah, we wanted to recreate this experience to get the same result.
We made French fries and onion rings. I don't eat onion rings. So
yeah, I didn't eat the onion rings either.
Don't bother with that.
Unless they're fresh.
And then I had a salad with some kind of gross garlic salad dressing that I'd never buy in a million years, but that's all we had. Because we haven't had salad in a long time, and we had salad dressing at the other house.
Oh, okay.
We never cleaned out the refrigerator. We never cleaned out the cupboards. We left a lot of stuff behind, but oh well, I'm not going to think about that. But anyway,
I thought you were going to say you let someone else give them all away, since you did that for everything else.
They probably had to be cleaned out and thrown in the trash.
Well, okay, so, and I will say too, as I was saying, onion rings are not really good unless they're freshly made. Like, why would you want to eat, like, frozen onion rings? They're not very good. I'd rather have fresh ones from, like, a deli or something. But the fries were okay.
Yeah, the fries were good.
Some black spots in them that I had to pick out and kind of got one to throw up. So, then Safi, after she had her dinner poo, her and him went to see Clockwork Orange. For no reason whatsoever.
I have no idea why we went to see that movie.
Yeah, why, Safi?
That was the movie of the time, the day, and we were going on a date. We wanted to go to a movie, have dinner, go to the movie. What you had to do is, because we lived in this small town, there's no movie theaters within any close proximity of any kind. even today. And we had to drive to Kansas City and go to, I think, Independence, Missouri, or downtown Kansas City, Missouri, and to a movie theater and to see this. And it was 1972, I guess, and because that's when it came out.
And you saw the movie without taking any drugs, right?
No, we didn't do that.
Well, it's just
they didn't
really
even have that.
It's just really weird, Safi,
They did
because
not have that.
afterwards,
There's one guy in my class in senior year. He and this other guy, I think they were started filtering into the community, but we did not have that. If you were in a suburb in Kansas City or Chicago, yeah, you probably have drugs everywhere, but not in a small town. Not at that time.
remember I was telling you about the marijuana, Safi?
They have. I'll tell you what they have in small towns.
Remember I was telling you?
They have alcohol, and so you can get alcohol. You can be 10 years old and get alcohol. I mean, that's well, at least it was like that. That was the thing. But no, we weren't drinking. We weren't doing drugs.
It's just really weird because you rode home for 30 minutes after.
Yeah, it took about 30 to 45 minutes.
And then you got out of the car and you walked all over your front lawn for some reason, and you threw up.
I walked up from the street to the front door and puked.
Really? Where?
In the front yard.
Well, did you spread it all around, or did you just
Marco,
throw up in one place?
In one place in the front yard. What happened was, Clockwork Orange has a scene where the guy is trying to get rid. They're trying to train him, and this is what they have to do. Now, after seeing the movie, I'm not sure what they gave him, but what I thought it was there's this drug called antabuse, and it's used, I don't know if it's still used today, but they would use this to treat alcoholics. And what you would do is, if you would drink alcohol after having this drug, it would make you get violently ill. And they did give him some kind of drug or drugs by an ejection in the rear end. And then he had to sit strapped to a chair with his eyelids propped open, which was really gross in and of itself. Forget about the shot. Then they would put these drops, and I thought that was the antabuse, but Marco reminded me that when you normally look at things with your eyes, you're blinking, and you may not be conscious that you're blinking, but it causes tears. And that helps your eyes. And you'll say sometime you might say, "Oh, my eyes are really dry today." Well, that's because you're not tearing up enough. So Marco said that was actually an eye doctor.
Yeah.
Putting eye drops, and it wasn't drops. I think it was just like tears.
Yeah, something.
Like, when you have contacts, you can actually buy a bottle of
something
these
that was
tears.
very simple for normal people to understand. Took Safi 50 years to get.
I didn't. I thought he was putting antabuse on his eyes.
No, Safi.
But no, that was the injection or whatever it was.
Just the mysterious thing is that you threw up. You puked 30 minutes afterwards, which.
Well, 45 probably. 45 minutes.
It's a 2-hour movie, so that's 2 hours after you had dinner, plus 45. So that's like 3 hours after dinner. So how did you throw up? Safi,
what would happen?
Did somebody?
I didn't notice it last night as much. He was very violent. The movie had a lot of violence, although. In today's terms, it really wasn't that much. I have seen so much worse in today's movies. There was a lot of sexual stuff. It was fake, but they still showed a lot of bodies. They showed pretend rape scenes.
Yeah, finally.
And so
it's why don't they do that anymore?
So anyway, because it's disgusting. So anyway,
no, it's not. It's a movie.
He actually murdered somebody. the guy. And the guy is, I gotta look his name.
Safi,
Malcolm McDowell.
people have seen the movie.
Okay, well,
A
not
lot.
everybody has seen it lately.
A lot.
But anyway, he goes into this place with his gang, but the gang's outside because they're going to do something.
Are you going to just explain the whole movie?
He murdered somebody, but it wasn't.
That's not a review.
It was an accidental thing.
It's not a review.
So he gets 10 years. So anyway, he was like a volunteer subject for the study, and he would be given this drug, then they would show him these violent images, and he would bark.
Are you just going to explain the whole movie?
No. Anyway, he would be gagging constantly.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain why you threw up.
Because I just saw that, and it made me gag. And it made me want to gag.
You threw up an hour after.
I don't care. I kept seeing it in my mind because he just kept gagging and gagging and gagging. And it just made me sick. And by the time I got home, even though it was late, there's really not a lot of traffic because you're going to these small towns. Everybody's in bed asleep,
Are you sure nobody in the theater passed you like a little sticker?
Cut it out.
And they said, put the sticker on your tongue.
Cut it out. No.
Are you sure nobody passed you like a cigarette and they said, this is a cigarette?
No, we didn't smoke. We didn't smoke. We did drugs, any of that. What is your problem?
I just don't understand what, you threw up. And how much did you throw up? Did you throw up like a lot?
I probably threw up my whole dinner.
Yeah,
basically.
So that's pretty bad, Safi.
Yeah, it is bad. But I kept hearing the gagging. It just kept going. But when I watched it last night, I've had, since that year, I've been in a situation, I had malaria, and I was violently ill with puking. And then I've been food poisoned here, not at this place, but over the years, like eating out. We've had a few times where I got food poisoning. Marco, too, has gotten terrible food poisoning. We were just gagging and puking. And so it didn't seem like the gagging didn't bother me as much as it did that night. And I was just, by the time I got home, I was so sick to my stomach. I was glad that I didn't throw up in the car on the way home, that I actually made it home and saved it for the front yard.
Oh.
Because it was awful, and I was miserable. And, but last night when I watched it, I didn't think, it's only really a small part of the movie.
Yeah, tiny.
And it's like from the, you have this whole first half, and then this is kind of like even over halfway mark for a while. And then, because they're showing they're proud of what they did to him because they cured him of being violent and a rapist and murder, and because they said he could be free if he did this program and it worked.
Really?
Well,
I wouldn't know. I didn't see the movie like a million times, like everyone else.
But so they even had him on stage, and they did this demonstration. He gagged and gagged and gagged, and then they showed him gagging at home when he got home, and certain things happened. But that was it. There was no more of that.
And you really set yourself up for failure because you chose to eat dinner at like 10 o'clock at night.
I didn't choose to do that. We have somebody who makes dinner, and he seems to think that 10 o'clock is a good time to eat dinner. And by that time, Marco and I are starving, and we've had a million snacks, and I've gotten kind of used to it. But the problem is, after you're done eating, it's time to go to bed because, see, we get up early. We get up, like I said, I have to be up at around 6 because the cat has to have his diabetic insulin, and he has at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. So I have to be up early. I have no choice. And Marco just gets up early. We get up early every day. We get more accomplished.
And you set yourself up for failure because you knew that you had to watch the movie and you didn't really care. And so then you ate at 10 o'clock at night, and you ate while you watched the movie. And I was like, oh, this is really good. I can't wait to see her spew. And so then I
don't know why Marco wanted me to spew.
So then I can film it. because I spewed while watching To Sir with Love.
You did?
Yeah.
That movie?
Yeah, I had salmonella, remember?
Oh, not because of the movie, but because you got food poisoning.
But it was just funny because I felt like throwing up because they kept on playing that song over and over and over and over and over again. Like, why do you keep playing that song? Like,
it was in the top 40.
Just play it once in the movie and then once in the end credits.
That was Petula Clark.
And stop playing it the entire fucking movie. Like, I don't need to hear that song over and over again to get what it means.
It was in the top 40.
But it's like
Petula Clark.
It doesn't matter. Like, they don't even do that nowadays. Like, it was so bad. Like, they just kept on playing that song.
I don't know.
They were like, you know what? Instead of showing everyone at their trip to the museum and showing like a cool sequence and that being like a meaty part of the movie, instead we're just going to show a picture slideshow while the song plays again.
Yeah, because it's the end of the year.
And it's like, God, throw up.
Yeah, so Marco and I know very well what it's like to be extremely violently ill.
Do you like to throw up,
No,
Safi?
I don't.
Why not?
See, and another thing, too, when I was growing up, I used to get terrible car sick. And terribly car sick. And so we'd go on any trip, we'd always have a barf bag. Because I would throw up constantly. We'd go anywhere. My parents it probably drove my parents crazy. And there was just nothing I could do. And it was funny because we got a plane ride, we were on a boat, we went to Nassau, and my parents were totally prepared for me to be violently ill, but I didn't get sick for either one of them. But my mom did. They made me take Dramamine, but I didn't take it. I spit it out because it was gross. It tasted awful. But my mom, she took the Dramamine, but she was violently ill. But my point is that the car ride going home, and then I saw that guy gagging over and watching him. That must have been the most miserable. He's an actor, and he's giving it his all, and having his eyes propped open. Marco said that he actually hurt his eye. One of his eyes, or both of them, doing that. It hurt the corneas. And so anyway, I mean, that was gross. Just thinking about it, it looked awfully miserable. So, but anyway, as far as the movie's concerned, I don't know what to think about it. I read about, I didn't think it was bad. I thought Malcolm McDowell, he's still acting today, or at least, I don't know if it's this year, but right before this year, he's done all kinds of stuff, and he's still going strong. He's really good. I think that people really need somebody like him because he's British, and he has a really certain air about him.
It seems like with him that, he really wishes that people would forget about A Clockwork Orange because he's seen it a million times and people have talked about it a million times.
Well, that's
and so it feels like he's trying to choose a lot of projects to do so that he can try to get people to forget about the movie.
Well, I don't see how they can, but I mean, he's so unlike that now. I mean, he was young.
It's weird because he's still like it a little bit, and so it's weird because you have actors like Jack Nicholson.
Nicholson. It's Nicholson. It's Nicholson.
Nicholson. He people think about The Shining with him, but they also think about The Joker, and they think about The Departed, and A Few Good Men. But
that's what it's called.
But with Malcolm McDowell, for some reason, like, you just can't help but just think about A Clockwork Orange. Like, I think that the movie is really good. It is one of the best movies. I prefer the book, though. Once you read the book,
Let me read the book.
No, you won't.
No, I think so. I might just. I'm reading
You won't
women
understand
talking,
it.
and I kind of don't care for it.
Yeah, that's because it's women talking, and like, who wants to see that?
Well, it's interesting to me because I've always been interested in the Mennonite Amish communities.
Yeah, but like, how about like a real story like Clockwork Orange? Like, that's an actual good story written by someone who actually wants to write a story. And so, I think that the movie is really good, but my main objective with this movie was just to get Safi to throw up. Because
he failed.
I
don't need to throw up either. I'm very glad. We just got through having COVID, and I don't want to be sick.
Your opinions on movies don't really seem to like matter because, they just change because you don't really remember any movie. Like, we were talking yesterday about... I
don't remember any of this movie except for the...
Yeah.
I remember him sitting there with his eyes propped open and all those images. I mean, they would show... sometimes even like now, you don't have your eyes propped open, but if you're shown a bunch of images and you're forced to just stare at them and they just flip them on the screen really quickly, back to back, over and over really fast, that can actually make you sick. That actually, just thinking back, gives me a stomach ache. And they, that's what they would do. In addition to having his eyes propped open and giving him that drug, and then the guy's just constantly putting tears in his eyes. He's sitting there right next to him, dropping this teardrop stuff in his eyes, and while he has them propped open, and it was just the whole thing. Ugh. But seeing those images like that makes me nauseous. So forget the drug. Just doing that can make me nauseous. So.
Well, I would say that a big problem with the movie is that in that scene is that I people show you that imagery all the time in association with the movie, and I had seen that before seeing the movie, and so when you see that, you're kind of expecting for the sequence to be a lot more intense than it actually is. Mm-hmm. And in the book it's a lot more graphic because they talk about how they're not just showing like Nazi bombing footage, like they're showing in the book, they're like, no, there's like a naked guy and they're castrating him without any anesthesia, and he's like tied up naked, and like they talk in detail about all these gross things that he's being shown, and it is a pretty creepy sequence. And in the movie it's just like, I mean, the invention that's in his eyes is creepy, the whole thing holding his eyes open, but the surroundings of like this empty like theater with these boring scientist people, it isn't really that scary.
No.
It feels almost like it could have been a comedy, like with a couple of changes, little additions of dialogue. Safi?
I don't know.
You have an opinion?
I don't think so.
You have a brain?
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the guy, the Unabomber, because remember he participated in these scientific experiments, and that's what I was thinking of too. And of course, the Unabomber had not done his duty back then. This was way before his time. So that's what made me think of too.
Yeah, a lot of people were put through those experiments, and that was pretty similar, and that is what a lot of people think about in association with the movie too. So I was really expecting for that whole sequence to be a lot more disturbing and a lot more like scary, because that's the whole center point of the movie, is that you take any killer and you put them in this place and torture them, and then suddenly they can't do any of that anymore. and that's the whole point of the movie. And in the actual movie, it's like a little tiny part, and it's not really that scary at all. The only thing that's scary is that
it's uncomfortable.
Is the uncomfortable thing of the eyes being held open.
Yeah.
So I would say that was kind of a failing of the movie, because I'm thinking about, with Stanley Kubrick, he has that whole sequence in The Shining with a ton of sequences in that movie that are a lot scarier than this.
Oh, yeah.
And
definitely.
and Eyes Wide
sound
Shut.
Effects too.
Yeah, and Eyes Wide Shut. And in this movie, it feels like it could have been a little bit scarier at that part of the movie. Especially the footage. The footage was so fake and phony. Like, they showed these fake, like, videos of, like, rape and supposed violence, and it looks so fake and cartoony. It was kind of, like, distracting, because you could tell that it was, like, clearly phony, and, it really wasn't as scary as it could have been.
Well, another thing they did, too, and I didn't realize this either at all, but they found out he liked Ludwig van Beethoven. And he liked him a lot. And he actually collected music that featured Beethoven's music. Anyway, they added that to the footage. And he was very distressed, mentally distressed by that, because they felt like they were like bastardizing his music, I think, and abusing it. And he thought that was the only thing, if you wanted to say a gang member who raped and murdered, but the murder was more accidental. I don't think it was deliberate.
Yeah, he killed tons of other people before the movie, Safi.
Okay.
That's kind of implied.
Well, anyway,
to normal people.
It was set apart from that, and he, by adding that to those scenes, and then he had that drug, that made him worse. So that was.
But what's your opinion on it, though?
That.
Like, what's your, like, you just explained it, but, like, what's the opinion that you have that you brought that up? Like, you're saying music.
That is something I didn't realize. It wasn't about the images alone. It was also the fact that what happened was they went and they went through the prison, and everybody had their room.
Now
open.
you're just explaining everything.
And they saw all these pictures of Beethoven. He had one on the wall. And
so what?
So anyway, they realized that he really liked him, and so they added that to his torture.
But what's the opinion on that, though?
The opinion is that
you're just saying what happened. You're not actually stating your opinion.
I don't know what you want from me. I really don't.
Well, you're not doing a review.
Okay, well, the review is, I guess I discovered more about the movie seeing it 50 years later.
Well, so the thing is that they're kind of exposing, since Safi doesn't really have an opinion, they're kind of exposing the fact that, it really is not in any way them turning him into a good person by showing him the images. It's them taking normal things that he likes and making him forced to not like them. Yeah. And so that's kind of like the evil part of it, is that they're taking his free will away by taking other things away, and they're like associating, and it's like really evil. And so you kind of technically feel sorry for him. And that's another thing, is that it's so good that in the 70s they made movies like this, where you have protagonists like this, because nowadays they never make a movie like this.
No, God.
Because none of the actresses could handle it, and it would be banned, and it would be like the Joker movie. Because you guys remember the Joker movie came out, and they pretended like men were going to commit mass acts of terror because the movie is radical and it encourages violence and all that bullshit. And they would do the same thing with the Clockwork Orange. So it's nice to see that back then they make these movies with protagonists like this, because the protagonist in a movie doesn't need to be a good person.
No, not at all.
And they never make a movie like about a woman like this, like a woman who's like the same as the main character in A Clockwork Orange.
Well, what about that woman, that true story with that woman who had messed up teeth, and she killed all those men?
But that was a sympathy movie. That was like, oh well, she was abused, and then that one guy tried to rape her, so she killed him in self-defense. Boo hoo.
Yeah,
And it's like in real life, she might have been lying about that, and I don't believe her one bit because she's a fucking serial killer. Like, and so even when they made that movie, it was all about giving sympathy to her and making her into a victim.
I didn't like it. I never felt sorry for her.
I didn't either, because you could tell. I mean, of course, she was abused up to being an adult, and probably afterwards as well. But she was a serial killer still. Like, she's a serial killer. So, but that's beside the point. Safi just used a point of deflection to try to deflect from the reality, which that was a movie from like, what, 2000?
I don't know.
Yeah, it was like the early 2000s. So, now we have the feminazi takeover of Hollywood and the ruining of movies to insert their agenda into everything, and they just don't do this movie anymore.
Yeah, but there's no more Stanley Kubrick either to do it. He died.
Well, they can't even hear what you're saying, though.
Okay, there's
'Cause
no
you're
more
mumbling.
Stanley Kubrick to do it anyway because he passed away.
That doesn't matter. They could
Oh,
still make
God.
could
Well,
still
there-
make
you
movies
can't-
like this now.
Oh, I guess they could, but no, you can't tell me that somebody. He was very unique, and he had a unique perspective in doing his movies. And I don't know if all the imitation in the world could happen. I don't think anybody could come up with anything like what he did.
I don't know. I think that some of his film. I think that like he was a good filmmaker, but some of his filmmaking techniques are a little overrated. Like the way that he shoots movies, it's like everything has to be wide shots of these like certain types of shots. And I think that that's why you said that the movie was slow and boring at some points.
Yeah, I did.
I think that all has to do with the way that he shot it, and this wide shooting and these slow shots. And I think that, someone like Alfred Hitchcock, he would have made the movie feel a lot faster if he had shot those same sequences. So I think that's something to talk about, is that I do feel a little bit like when I rewatch these Kubrick movies, are these shots really necessary the way that they're shot? Like, we have to show like these long, wide shots of people walking down hallways like it's some sort of a revelation of art that he's like walking down a hallway or something. Like,
well, there was one weird shot.
What?
I wish I would have written it down, but they were talking. It was Malcolm McDowell and somebody else, and they were talking. Malcolm McDowell was in another part of the room, and the other person was like right in front of the camera. In fact, they weren't even showing all of that person. They were showing part of the person. And then all you could hear was Malcolm. There wasn't this thing where usually when you see people talking in a movie, they show both talking. They'll go from one to the other, or show them both in the one picture. But they didn't show him, Malcolm McDowell, at all. He was like back in the background. He was still in the same room. He wasn't in another room. He was in the same room, and he was talking in the background. And this lasted for like a couple of minutes, and I thought that was really odd. I didn't get why they did that at all, what that was supposed to do. So it was just something, it's just weird things I noticed in the movie. One of the weird things but I didn't quite understand why they were doing that, because that wasn't normal.
Well, there were a lot of weird things like that, but I think that there were also some great things, like I would say the whole thing with where he shoves the statue in her mouth, and you see like the quick flash of the panning. I thought that was a good part, a good shot that they did. Obviously, the opening shot where they zoom out of him and everyone, that's an iconic shot.
In the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
that was cool.
There were some really good shots like that, and I'm thankful that he did the movie, because I don't think that someone else could have done it well, unless it was like, I don't know, maybe Hitchcock or something.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it was, I mean, I'm glad that, which is really funny, because I'd say out of all the movies that I've seen, I've had to watch during this week, I don't know how many have I seen, 5?
Yeah.
So 4 out of the 5, I've been happy to watch them.
Yeah.
Because it's been years since I've seen that movie. I mean, not since I was a junior in high school, and that was a million years ago. And then, Bone Tomahawk, and anyway, I was glad to be able to see it, because, I've seen The Shining a million times, but I've only actually seen this movie once.
That's because you wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah, I wouldn't watch it again. So
you had to be forced.
Yeah, so
like
I watched
with everything else.
And I was glad to be able to do that. I thought it was worthwhile.
Like with your ranking videos.
Oh, for God's sakes, Marco. So anyway, that's it, and my review.
No, you're not getting out of it that fast.
I think I'm done now.
No, you're not. You hardly even talked about the movie.
I don't know what else to say about it.
Well,
I love the shot at the beginning. Marco just brought it up, where they showed them together, and it's almost like it was a painting. It was very set up.
We never talked about the dystopian thing.
I don't know what we talked about. What we talked about this off camera was that this was considered to be a dystopian movie and a dystopian book.
Yeah, I did not know that it took place in the future until I read the book.
I didn't either. When we saw it, I don't remember that.
I thought that this was just the 70s.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Because the whole movie looks very 1970s.
Yes, it does.
So, I think that one of the issues of the movie, I would say probably the biggest issue of the movie, because it is a pretty perfect movie. I mean, you know, there are certain reviews that when you do them, there's not really much to talk about because you're kind of grasping at straws.
Right.
Like with the Home Alone and Halloween and stuff like that. And this is the same type of thing, but I do think the biggest problem is the fact that it's supposed to take place in the future, and there is almost like a minimal attempt to make it look like the future. And it was almost like Stanley Kubrick either thought that that's genuinely what the future would be like, or he just couldn't figure anything out. Like, he didn't really think like,
Which is kind of odd, because there was the Jetsons cartoon, you had Star Trek, but maybe Star Trek hadn't come out yet. I don't know. I did watch that in college, but that was a few years later. So those are all things in the future. So I don't know. I don't understand that either. Sorry.
Like the attempt. Yeah, they couldn't even hear you say sorry, Safi. You have to speak up louder than that. The few attempts to make it like take place in the future are really like kind of
weak. Well, the car. They got in this car and took it to this place they called home, and that's where the rider was, and that was odd to me. It had the word home.
Yeah,
Why?
the word home was in front.
It was in lights, and it was in the front, on the road, right by the house.
I think that the only reason that it was there was for, and one of the greatest things about the movie, which is something that I like to see in a lot of movies and shows, is the paralleling. And so, like, all the things that happen in the first half, they all come back to haunt him in the second half.
Yeah.
And so, like, one of the things is he's badly injured from something else, and he comes to the writer's house on accident, and you just get this really ominous feeling because of, you see the word home, and you automatically know, that's that place. So I kind of think the only reason they had home is because of it would trigger your senses. Yeah. That's what I would suspect. Because other than that, like, anyone could have home. Like, why didn't they make that more of a part of the movie? Like, they didn't have that for, like, the apartment buildings or anything. Like, they didn't have home outside the apartments or anything. They didn't have prison outside the prison. So it's like, see what I mean? Like, there was this very minimal attempt at futuristic anything.
Yeah.
I guess some of the colored hair thing was kind of like,
oh, maybe that was
futuristic.
What's funny is we went to London in 1985, 1986, and they did have people with colored hair. So it was like the mid 80s.
Really?
Yeah, all kinds of weird. It was.
Did you have a party with them?
So anyway.
Did they invite you back to their pads?
Anyway, they did have colored hair. I thought that, I didn't even think about that. The mother, because we see people like that now, here.
Oh yeah, a lot, and it's
Purple hair, green hair.
It's a typical sign of mental illness. Is somebody who colors their hair.
Well, I don't like it.
Like, I make a rule that if I'm looking at actors, I don't talk to anyone with colored hair.
Well, it's to each his own, but I don't care for it, and I know that the fad will go out. It's probably out in London. I mean, when we were there in 85, 86, it was a big deal, and but I bet you anything today, I bet they don't have that.
It's a big part of, like,
I know somebody who lives in England. I should ask them.
It's a big part of the mentally ill culture is to just. It's like they're showing you that they have a problem, and they just want to broadcast it as loudly as possible by doing that.
Yeah, that was probably to show a dystopian world. I didn't even think about that because we see it today.
But the thing
I
is,
saw it in the 80s. So
the thing is, though, is that I saw this movie in 6th grade for the first time. And that was back when there wasn't really that much colored hair, and I didn't really think anything of the colored hair very much.
Yeah.
Even back then.
About that.
And
I didn't remember it either. When I saw it in 1972, and I didn't remember anything about purple hair. His own mother had purple hair.
Yeah.
But she had wigs.
Yeah, a lot of people in the movie, I think.
The wigs.
A lot of people have wigs.
Yeah.
Well,
but,
of course,
they showed her because that was his mom.
That's a British thing, though. Wigs. You know, like the fucking judges and everything.
Yeah.
Fucking.
Barristers, the lawyers.
Yeah.
Judges. Yeah.
Pretending like they're in the 1600s. I would say that, you know, I really wish that, and I've said this before too, the first thing that I said when I saw the movie in middle school is I said I wish that there would be a Clockwork Orange themed restaurant that was futuristic, because I think that would be really cool to have like a Clockwork Orange restaurant with a Clockwork Orange themed food, Clockwork Orange drinks. I think that would be a lot of fun. What do you think of that, Safi?
I don't know.
What?
I think you'd have to leave the sexual stuff.
What are you thinking
out of
about the boobs? Because
Well, I
that's
mean,
all
the
you
whole-
think about? Like, you got
No, Marco,
offended?
if you don't stop it.
Like, God, what is it with your fixation? I'm
I don't
talking...
think it would go over well.
So what?
If it was, I mean, they're trying to get rid of drag shows, and it's so stupid. So well, I know they wouldn't have a restaurant like that.
No, they're trying to get rid of drag shows aimed at children. It's a completely
God.
different thing.
I don't think so. I don't think you know what you're talking about.
I do.
No,
And
you
so
don't.
I do. And so they should have like for instance, they should have like at the tables they have like naked women, and you just get your drinks from their boobs at all the tables.
I don't
And it's like, all these feminazis, they're so pro, like, oh, you shouldn't be offended by a woman breastfeeding her child in public. And it's like, well, if you're not supposed to be offended by that, then what would be wrong with getting your drink out of a woman's boobs at a Clockwork Orange bar? Like, it's the same thing.
That would be really funny.
So, like, why can't they do that? Like, and then, of course, the desserts. You could have, like, that popsicle was one of the weirder things about the movie because it looked so good. Like, it was like a fruity popsicle, and it looked like it wouldn't just melt right away. Like, there was something about it. And so they could have, like, a pudding. And it's like a pudding with, like, popsicle towers and things. And it could be, like, a really weird but delicious treat. And just tons of other stuff. Like, you could have Malcolm McDowell. He comes to visit once in a while. And he's like, yeah, at least I don't have to watch the movie again, so I'll show up here and wave at everyone. What do you think of that, Safi? Is that good?
I've never thought about that.
You could even, like, put, like, contraptions on people. Like, you could have an eating challenge where you wire people up to, like, that eye contraption where it wouldn't go in their eyes, but it would be, like, kind of like their head is trapped. And they would have to, like, eat a whole meal while in that contraption. And if they do, then they don't have to pay for it.
I don't know. Now I'm kind of worried because...
What?
Oh, it just seems like whenever we start talking about an actor and actress, they pass away.
What?
Like we're thinking about them, and
what do you mean?
What's going on with them is they're at the end of their... And he's really old. I'm not sure how old he is, but I'm sure that he is... I'm at least 80-something.
Safi.
And I'm really worried now he's going to pass away.
What?
Because that girl
Why?
who played Wednesday in the first Addams Family, I've been watching videos of her. They have this thing where she teaches Lurch how to dance. It's really cute. And she just passed away. She had a massive stroke, and they kept her on life support for 3 days.
Well, Safi, there was a show that came out
and she was
called Wednesday.
only in her 50s.
The show just came out in December with an actress that you didn't put on the list for some reason. And, so Wednesday videos would be trending on YouTube. So it's like, it doesn't really have anything to do with that woman
I've been watching
dying.
that for a while, though. It's just kind of weirds me out.
You haven't watched the Wednesday series, though.
No, I haven't.
Neither have I.
You told me not to.
No, I don't really care what you do.
Well, I might, but I wasn't really interested in doing that, actually.
Why?
So, I don't know. I'm just not in the mood for that. It's like, how many Wednesdays have they had now? They had that one that just passed away. You have Christina Ricci. You have this new girl. And then what about all these cartoon character people? Isn't there another one? Wasn't there another one?
Cartoon person dying?
No, I'm just talking about there's been so many different Wednesdays.
There's been 3.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think you're confusing them with the Munsters or something. I don't know.
Well, there haven't been hardly anybody with that.
I kind of think that the one thing we haven't talked about with the Clockwork Orange is the fact that, you complained and complained that Superbad had all this sexual stuff in
There's
it.
him talking about it.
But then with the Clockwork
just
Orange,
mouthing off.
But then with the Clockwork Orange, it's like,
What?
it's like, it's like how do you, you didn't even mention it, like the thing with, well, there's a lot of subtext, I guess, and I guess you wouldn't really be able to
I think
tell.
I think it's gone on.
I mean, what do you think, Safi? Like you act like
what
you're.
What do you want me to talk about?
Paralyzed.
I don't care. It was a dystopian movie. It was a gang.
It's really good.
And it was pretty graphic. I mean, for that time, and I don't even remember all that. All I remember was the puking scene just kept popping out in my mind. I don't remember any of that other stuff.
Well, see, normal people, when they watch movies, they don't really care about any of that stuff, but weirdos, they watch that stuff and get really offended because it's really like, ugh.
I didn't. It wasn't that offended me, maybe for Superbad. It's just that he just kept mouthing off about sex over and over and over, and I mean, it's like it's all he talked about. He couldn't talk about anything else, and even his friends were like, "What's your deal?" I mean, it's all you talk about.
That's the point, though.
But that
his
was
character.
him. And like I said for the millionth time, in order to give that movie a fair chance, I wanted to look at as a total project, not look at specific things like that I did not care for. And I had to think about, there's probably people like that, and you gotta wonder. Now that's a fake movie. In other words, that's not based on real people, right? And he's a sex addict. You have to wonder, because I mean, but he was a kid.
It's a comedy.
And he had not had a lot of experience. It sounded like he had a ton. He sure knew how to talk the talk, but he really hadn't. And so it was almost like he was trying to convince people of something.
That was another.
He wasn't.
Well, that was the point of his character, but that was another thing about this movie, was that I never realized until I read the book that he was supposed to be like a teenager. Like
I know they were
thought,
adults. I know that was another thing. They were supposed to be in high school. They don't call it high school. They call it something else. But that didn't matter.
I guess
because his mother said, "Oh, you're not going to school today, dear?" No, I really something like I didn't feel well.
I have a rummy tummy nummy.
Yeah, the way
the weird slang.
Can't imitate the slang. It's hard enough to do the dialect.
I think they have like a translator or something for that slang. Like, people really like that slang.
Yeah, they did have somebody, but he and the rest of them, they looked like they were in college.
Yeah, They
did not look like high school kids at all. In fact, none of the people they were around, they fought another gang. They didn't look like high school kids either.
Maybe it's just because if they cast teenagers, they wouldn't be able to show them naked. So
yeah, that might have something to do with it.
Which I don't blame them for that, though, because like if the movie requires the characters to be naked, then obviously you have to hire adults. So it's just distracting, because I at least think they could have hired teenagers for some of the other characters. Like there's other teenage gang movies that are more convincing, and then there's adult gang movies that are more convincing, like The Warriors. Those are all supposed to be adults, and you can tell.
What about that movie you talked about that you were forced to read that book?
Ooh, The Outsiders.
Yeah, wasn't that gangs?
It was all teenagers, yeah.
Those were real teenagers.
But see, there wasn't
they looked like real teenagers.
There wasn't any sex in that book, so they didn't have to have adults for that.
Oh.
So.
Okay, well,
Well, what would you rate Clockwork Orange in terms of food?
I think I'll just rate it with the dinner that I ate.
Really?
Yeah.
It's kind of boring.
I thought about doing a chef salad, but
you just did a chef salad.
I just did a chef salad. But no, because I never eat hamburgers, and so I haven't watched this movie since I first watched it, actually. And so I have had a few hamburgers since then, but I rarely eat a hamburger. So I've rarely watched this movie, and then I had French fries. Well, I've eaten those, not these kind, but usually. But and then I haven't had a salad in months.
Yeah, you used to have salads like all the time, like. There's this really weird dressing you used to get, and it was like
Island or
no
Russian.
It was like
dark.
It was like dark pink.
That's probably
or red.
Russian. It's Russian.
And you would get that all the time, and it was so weird. Like, God, just eat some ranch dressing, weirdo.
Well, that's the thing of your generation. And Jim's generation, your brother's ranch dressing.
Eat some ranch.
What would you rate it in terms of food?
Spaghetti.
Oh yeah, because he had some spaghetti when he went back for the second time to home where the writer was, and he had raped his wife. But I don't know if he remembered being there. That's the thing. It didn't seem like he did. They gave him spaghetti, although it didn't look very...
It did not look very good.
It didn't look very good. It didn't look very Italian.
It looked like Skyline chili a little bit.
It looked like British spaghetti or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Very gross spaghetti.
Yeah, it did not look good. I didn't see any red sauce.
But that's what I think about with this movie, because this movie is just an undeniable masterpiece.
Well, that's what I was thinking. And I never call a movie a masterpiece, but I thought it was because it was so different, and they took so many chances and risk. And there's a few flaws, like the dystopian thing really isn't clear.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to talk about it to come up with things that they might have thought made it dystopian. But, when I watched it back in 1972, I never thought about it being the future at all. I thought it was then.
Yeah.
And I didn't think about that. And because, back then, that was... You're talking about the Beatles and all these different groups, and they had these particular haircuts. They wore these particular clothes that people did not wear in the United States. So, and this was a gang, so it's a gang in England. It's not a gang in the United States. So, what would the gang in the United States be? Oh, jeans, jackets, and denim. Lots of torn up denim and. Like Hell's Angels.
Safi, this was a style for the movie.
Yeah, but I know, but it's
the characters.
You don't know that this dystopian thing got lost.
Oh, I know.
That's what I mean, because what you thought, well, you're just seeing something that's British, so it's going to be a little bit different.
Well, it's a solid movie.
Yes, it is a solid movie.
We will watch it again.
No, I don't think I'd watch it again, but
Really?
I hope Malcolm McDowell's okay. I'm going to have to look him up, because now I'm really worried about him. Because he is old. So, a lot of people have passed away in the last 6 months.
God,
and
Safi.
It's really scary.
Fuck
but
off.
They're a lot younger, though. He's older, and the older
that's
ones
another
seem to
thing.
be living longer. And
why didn't you put Malcolm McDowell on the list?
I don't know. I was trying to think of people your age.
You could have been
closer.
You could have been nice to Malcolm and put him on the list.
Yeah, and another thing too. Remember, he would wear those false eyelashes, but he only wore them on one eye.
Yeah.
And he didn't wear them like he would normally wear them. One was stuck to his upper cheek, near his eye, and the other one was like above his eye. I don't know. It was really weird.
My favorite thing about the costumes was probably how on their sleeves they had those like fake blood and eyeballs
on the sleeves.
Was weird. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. So anyway, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.